Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Tar. This film was directed by Todd Field. Todd has only made 3 films. His first film, In the Bedroom, I quite liked. His second film in 2006, Little Children, I admired from a technical standpoint, but I kind of struggled with it in other areas. But this is his first film, I think, in about 15 years. And it's good that he knows what he wants, because this is the kind of movie where I think you really need to have a lot of trust in your actor, and the actor needs to have a lot of trust in the director, because it is a massive undertaking for the actor in particular, obviously. But it's also huge from a character building standpoint, especially for the writer. And the world building is very crucial in this film as well. This is a movie about a female composer called Lydia. She is fictionalized, but honestly, it's almost as if she were a real person. But she's somebody that is very successful, obviously, in the art world, and somebody who has kind of dominated her medium. And I mean that more from like an accomplishment type of perspective, but yeah, she's broken down boundaries as a woman in music, even though gender for her is not necessarily the emphasis in terms of how she likes to identify herself in the public eye. But I've always found these kinds of subjects really fascinating. Like The Red Shoes is one of my favorite films of all time. That is, of course, about a ballet company. And I'm interested in it when you take art and you make it into a successful business, and you're making a film about it as an industry. And I love it just because it is such a contradiction, having art that is, I normally associate art as, being honest and vulnerable when it's really good, and then suddenly it's becoming very much a hierarchy. And this is true of any great, symphony, opera, like, ballet, New York City Ballet as an example, or, obviously Hollywood is just an obvious example here, the Academy. Just the notion of artistic integrity kind of getting lost among, more political sort of things and the competitive nature of things. But ironically, that can drive the artistry as well. So obviously this is a film probing that world and a lot of the ethical questions that we ask ourselves through art, how we reveal ourselves, our morality through art, or how we don't do that. This film seems to be very interested in, trying to find a line, or lack thereof, I guess, a line between art and identity politics, and obviously separating the art from the artist. The moral codes that we say we live our life by, versus the contradictions of actual reality. And I could go on and on. This is a very, very dense film. And it's a film that has a very slow, very methodical type of mood to it, and a lot of monochromatic colors, a lot of grays and blues, and it is focused on that kind of very melancholy, sterile environment. And it's all structured by like New York Times interviews, NPR, and like expensive lunch meetings and such. And it's, as you're watching it, I found it to be quite claustrophobic. And even though the film is subtle about how it's building its tension, I think that the power dynamics are always just really interesting in it. The power dynamics is what give the film its foundation. It's certainly a huge aspect to our main character, Lydia. And there's a scene very early on that I think is very, very important to the film, and especially to her character. And basically she's giving a lecture. She's teaching a college course, I think, and naturally the students are all Gen Z, so naturally they tend to be a little bit more identity politics conscious than maybe her generation, for sure. But yeah, there's a moment when she mentions Bach, and one of the students says that they can't get into Bach because he was a misogynist. Now, Lydia naturally rejects this thesis, as you can imagine, and she starts to impulsively sort of share her own philosophy on separating the art from the artist. And like I said, this scene is so important. It's giving you everything, I think, about her character. It is a presentation of the thesis, and she's clearly, in her response, very defensive and a bit emotional. And as a woman, of course, that is renowned, and she has a major ego, she uses all of that. She commands the room with her voice and her stature and all of that. And when she is making this particular argument, she starts to really go off on these very kind of chaotic tangents that I don't think really help the argument, at least fail to give it clarity. And again, all of this is very key, because it's like this is the first time you're seeing just like a little thread dangling from the scarf, and we're going to start to pull at it, and it's going to unravel. And, obviously more is going to be revealed about her, because we know, just as a character, we know very little about her as a woman. A lot of the things we learn about her are more just about her mannerisms and the way that she says things. It could be just in a lecture, we get insight into the type of person that she is. But I like all of that. I think it feels very authentic. And her personal philosophies are really going to be challenged, and they're going to become the focus of the film. And we see how muddled they can get, because she is going to have to face herself and her past, because this film is about cancel culture. It is about her facing potential sexual assault charge. But we get to see kind of how our own beliefs tend to contradict a lot of our actual actions in life. And we often arrive at certain beliefs more as a defense mechanism because of maybe something that happened earlier in our life. And I think with this character, that's certainly a thing, because I do think her public beliefs, or the way that she she presents them, it might be quite different from what she believes in her private life. And I don't think that's something that she's aware of. I don't think it's something that she can look in the mirror and face about herself. Naturally, a lot of the movies that have come out post Me Too era in Hollywood, you know, they deal with a lot of that particular subject without really kind of probing the messiness of those particular situations. I've seen a lot of different films where it's like we're so easily kind of victimizing one person and the other person is the villain in these particular situations. And this is a film that's actually kind of trying to open that up a little bit, like the concept of hearsay versus the truth, because a lot of the time these allegations come up, there is no evidence to go on. I have heard a few people say that this film rejects the idea of identity politics, but I think that's kind of a dismissive thing to say. I think, if anything, it reveals how much identity politics is actually embedded in just our culture, even just as a part of romanticism without realizing it. Even with Lydia Tarr, she may reject that notion for herself, identity politics, and yet so many of her beliefs and everything, how she has experienced music all through her life, it's all about identity politics. Everything in this film is slowly kind of chiseling away at this hardened exterior, and I don't know, I feel like it's all serving a very important purpose. Every line, every word is shaping everything. And Cate Blanchett here gives just an amazing virtuosic performance. It is incredibly ambitious what she's doing here, and you can just see how much work she put into this character. This character is just so ingrained in her being, and it feels so effortless. It's absolutely astounding. Cate Blanchett, just one of the great actresses. She has a great androgynous look about her, and I think that's part of why she is such a chameleon. And she has that ability to be able to kind of slip into the masculine or the feminine very effortlessly. And I don't know, I think this is why this is kind of a perfect role for her. But also she just has like this really deep voice and this command over a room that is, you know, naturally very reminiscent of Katharine Hepburn. Can't help but make the comparison. I know she played her, but I think there's a reason why. And similarly to Katharine Hepburn, especially as she got older through her career, it's hard to pair her with a romantic interest that really can take up a lot of the story or the screen, just because she's such a powerhouse performer. She just has this lean, kind of long look about her, and her walk, just everything about her inspires fear. She has a hardness and a physicality, and she can be very aggressive, I think, in spouts, but also very blunt in her delivery. But the way she'll impulsively go on a rant or something like that, I don't know, it just feels so right and so accurate to what, you know, somebody like that might be, somebody in the liberal arts to that level. But just the burden she's having to carry on her shoulders as the actress here, just bravo, an astounding piece of work. And yeah, I think she is finding a fine line, as I said, between being distant but also compelling. And the filmmaking here is really not helping her out much, in the sense of, it's not like she's the star of Whiplash, or she's not the star of like Black Swan. There's a flatter artistic style, especially the cinematography here, and so it's demanding more of the performers. There's a lot less close-ups and a lot more less camera trickery. So the performers have to create a lot of the tension themselves. And then even when you're looking at the Mahler 5, the symphony that she's supposed to conduct here, you know, it's not embodying the artistic work and kind of mirroring her in the same way as it might, you know, in a film like Black Swan with all those cinematic flourishes, where it's very surreal and thriller-esque. No, again, like I said, this is a slow burn where a lot of the details of the dialogue is more creating the complexity here. And I enjoyed this approach. I found it to be very refreshing, but as I said at the beginning, in order for me to really look at this film and really kind of think about the thesis and whether or not I feel it truly achieved something profound, I think I would need to see the film again. Because I can see how at times, especially in the third act, the lack of emotional sensitivity in the film kind of keeps you from feeling that satisfying arc from her character. And yes, while there is a lot of density to the ideas and everything, there are times too where I feel like certain symbols, certain ideas will just feel a little bit schematic. I guess it was the way that they portray, you know, the difference between her generation and Gen Z. And while, you know, it is accurate certainly in a lot of ways, it also felt, you know, a little bit too cartoonish, maybe not accurately represented, whereas other things are very well represented. And I wanted more of the humanity, more of that, you know, like the weight, the impact of what's going on in the third act to have, I guess, just a little bit more conviction. And in the third act, you know, spoiler alert, but, you know, she's very distant from the life that she once knew. And so, you know, naturally you'd think there's guilt and there's bitterness, and we're seeing all of the aftermath, and yet just symbolically, I felt a lot of what we're seeing here felt a little bit pointed and maybe a little bit empty or shallow, especially when you're asking all of these really interesting questions at the beginning of the film. So I'm not sure how a lot of that sits with me currently. But yeah, one of my favorite things about the film is the first two acts. And I love the ambiguity of it, because we don't know what happened between Tar and the woman who, you know, was, I guess, accusing her of sexual assault, or her family. I can't quite remember, but it's where is the truth? Where is the evidence? Is one more justified than the other? It's often way more complicated, again, than it's often painted in a lot of these films and in a lot of times in real life. And when a person's life is destroyed publicly, it reverberates in all aspects of life and not just their own. And so I think this is a very deserving subject matter at present. But yes, I found myself really fascinated by the film, even though the sterile nature of it, I guess, made it a little bit difficult to penetrate at times. But I am impressed with my initial experience of it, and it does continue to shift in my mind constantly. I do keep thinking about it. And yeah, even if you don't initially have some really concrete stance on it, I do think it's great for just cinema fans, cinema lovers, fans of art to check it out and see for yourself. But that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website. As always, it is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are wonderful. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Welcome to the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.